What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of CollectCo Connection, your one and only accounts receivable podcast. Today, we have the absolute honor of welcoming Syntheia Nagel, Chief Compliance Officer with Cedar Financial. Syntheia has a wealth of experience in the debt collection industry. She's navigated the ever-evolving landscape of compliance and becoming a leading voice within the debt recovery world with features across ACA International, the Accounts Recovery publication, and so many more. In today's episode, we'll be diving deep into the latest trends inside of healthcare patient debt recovery, including some of the new CFPB regulations and state laws, and how these laws impact patient collections. So get ready to hear expert insights on staying compliant while managing patient debt responsibly. Syntheia, great to have you on the show.
Hey, Chris, it's really great to be here today. Thanks so much for inviting me and letting me share this important information with the team.
No, absolutely. It's such an honor to have you on the show, and I can't wait for the listeners to hear this wealth of knowledge that you have to share with us, particularly right now as the landscape of regulations in healthcare is changing so vastly. So let's jump right in. Last week, Syntheia, you shared with me the new California medical law, hot off the press. How are regulations like this reshaping how healthcare providers approach patient collections, or especially with the new requirements around billing transparency and restrictions on reporting medical debt? Like, how is this affecting what we do in our day to day?
Right. Well, I have to tell you, quite frankly, Chris, me and compliance officers across the nation have a serious case of whiplash from the frequency of the
I
new
bet.
legislation regarding this medical debt. We're going to go see the doctors ourselves, right? Um, the good news is this. Most of the rules are really clarifications on how medical bills should be processed and collected. And for
Mm,
the most part, I think the changes are very positive for consumers and patients. We all see the doctor, and quite frankly, everybody deserves clarity with respect to medical billing, insurance interactions, and opportunities for charity care are essential to all of us. The rules really help the people who are also financially vulnerable, in our communities. So, you know, yeah, it's kind of, challenging to comply because we definitely want to comply,
right.
but I'm really glad to see um, I'm glad to see these positive changes and these clarifications. It's really helpful.
Well, that's really good to hear. I mean, it sounds like from your stance that while it might affect the day to day of what debt recovery agencies are doing in that practice of managing patient debt, to be fair, a lot of the protections and the securities are intended for the consumer. So maybe we have to change a little bit of our internal practices and policies, but ultimately it's for the greater good and the protection of the one who, to be fair, really needs it the most.
Right, right, exactly.
Um,
100%.
There is one specific state. So I wanted to ask, I just got notice of New York's new medical debt reporting ban. Can you discuss the impact on healthcare providers and even patient credit reports? Like, just walk me through what this medical debt reporting ban, well, like, what are the implications of that?
Yeah, of course, of course. So New York and Colorado enacted sweeping rules regarding medical bills in 2023.
Mm,
And those two states were the very first to specifically ban credit reporting all medical accounts. In fact, in the state of New York, if if a medical account is reported to the credit reporting agency,
hmm.
the law deems that account void. So
Just like
that
that.
it's voided exactly just like that.
Oh,
And
wow.
the implications of that is not just the loss of that revenue, but also now the risk of whoever's asking for that money. They're now collecting an unauthorized debt because that debt's been voided by state law. So now you're in trouble with the state and the federal government.
Deeper hot
So,
water as you go
yes,
along. Yeah. Um,
yes.
how likely do you think that it is that other states kind of follow the footsteps of some of these early states? Like, do you think that that's something we should all prepare for as well?
100%, 100%. Quite honestly, Chris, I've seen this coming. And I've talked about it a lot in our organization. The CFPB started beating this drum in 2014 with their report highlighting how medical debt was really disproportionately affecting credit scores and consumer credit reports. The report emphasized that really medical debt is often arises from circumstances that are outside of our control, like emergencies or potential like insurance issues, and that many consumers are not aware of their medical debts until they were reported to the credit reporting agencies.
Mm,
Because we say, oh well, you pay your copayment at the doctor, and then you assume that the doctor is billing the insurance company, and you just kind of assume that all that ecosystem works.
right,
But
right.
sometimes it doesn't. There's sometimes typos, billing errors, coding errors, and so truthfully, people didn't even realize that there was a past due amount until it popped on their credit report like a big surprise. And,
Yeah.
we're all trying to keep a high score so that we can, pay less for insurance and, qualify for jobs and all those things.
Right. And you know what? When you put it that way, it makes sense that the CFPB wants to increase the amount of protection and the sensitivity of what's occurring to the actual consumers, the patients, because getting caught off guard like that, particularly in the most sensitive of natures of anything healthcare related, it's not fair. It really isn't fair. And so now is probably the right time for agencies to change what they're doing internally and kind of follow a stricter practice at how they are ultimately protecting and helping the patient through this
Yeah,
process of resolution. So, really, really
exactly.
sound insight. You mentioned Colorado earlier. I just saw a notice of Minnesota popping up on the new regulations list.
Yeah.
How do you advise other agencies to ensure their compliance across jurisdictions? Are there like resources, websites? Like, what should these agencies be tuning into?
Yeah, exactly. Well, first and foremost, any medical provider really needs to be keenly aware of the laws that are being passed in their state just to make sure they've got time to modify their systems and, process and to main and processes to maintain compliance.
Hmm.
The other thing that's really important for all of us, I mean, here we are coming up in, election season, but truthfully, being involved in professional organizations is really helpful, um, because that gives us a bigger voice where laws are being made.
Right.
So knowing your local representatives, your senators, um, going to the Capitol, going, and talking to legislators and politicians about your business, about how laws affect your business, what could be the
Hmm.
potential negative outcomes for if you're going to have to demand payment up front as a medical provider and then the insurance reimburses the patient. There are a lot of potential negative ramifications that are going to happen to consumers because of these laws going into effect. Because let's face it, while there are some very large medical groups out there, there are also some solo practices, some dental offices, and
Yeah.
specialty offices, psychiatric care and things like that that are independent. And if those people can't get their bills paid because it's not being credit reported, so if you get that, you would hope that somebody would value the services that you provided as a medical professional. But there are people out there who quite frankly,
Right.
they it's not, they don't really maybe care so much. um it could cause you to change your practices where you had to take cash up front and then have the patient deal with the insurance company themselves. So there are some negative implications, but being involved
Hmm.
in your professional organization gives you a bigger voice at the Capitol, whether it's again state or federal. And our voices all need to be heard. Lawmakers need and politicians need to know and understand how those rules will affect our business. The other thing about being involved in a professional organization is the networking, sharing best practices, sharing
Hmm.
policies, procedures, systems, ideas, and tips. I mean, we're stronger together no matter what industry you're in.
Yeah, I just want to highlight one point, and that's advising anybody in this industry to go and be a voice for their communities. I know that you've experienced a change in regulations, just strictly depending on whatever the political decision is, and how that really changes the landscape. And I think the biggest takeaway from that advice you gave is, look, there's probably a pretty large gap between those that are making the laws and those that are actually affected by them, the boots on the ground voices. And so encouraging those industry community members to go and speak at how this small change could impact me this way, or this is what my day to day looks like that way. I feel like it really does make all the difference, and it helps the greater good of the direction we're trying to head towards.
It really does. It really does. In fact, earlier this year, I started becoming more involved in the California Association of Collectors, and I had
Hmm.
the privilege of working with several other people on reviewing the bills, um, and providing that insight to our lobbyists so they can speak with the politicians saying,
Wow.
yeah, this idea is really great in the policy in context, but some company systems don't have the capacity to produce this type of report or information required by the state if you are to enact
Yeah.
this requirement. Um, so just having, you can do as little. I mean, that's how I started, just, you know, reading a couple of pages and providing insight. Um, there's a lot of opportunity out there. All you have to do is just, raise your hand and ask. And it really is worth the investment.
No, I 100% agree. And I mean, look, I think that all of these voices together in the community are really what comprise our best foot forward. And I mean, what's the expression, especially with some of those lobbyists? You don't know what you don't know. And sometimes you need to get that information from the people who are actually living it, breathing it, boots on the ground. And so, yeah, to all of our listeners, if you're working in this field, absolutely we encourage you to become a voice within the community, just to share what some of these changes might look like in a realistic point of view from what you're experiencing. So, so heavy. I know that we're kind of short on time, but I wanted to get you with one last question, Cynthia. Um, Considering the evolving medical debt regulations, they're obviously becoming more stringent. Can you share some insights on balancing patient care and debt collection while staying compliant with new federal and state regulations? I mean, at this point, obviously the focus is on protection to the consumer. But to the point that you made earlier, there are large agencies, there are mom and pop agencies, and some of these decisions are really, hindering them from being successful as well. So, like, what kind of advice could you give for that balancing act between patient and debt recovery?
Well, thanks for that opportunity, Chris. I'm going to say something. Pardon me. I never thought I'd say this. But when I was in the military, there's a saying that you learn. It's called embrace the suck.
Mm.
Okay. And this is all about, minding your attitude. Change isn't comfortable, but it's constant. So you just have to embrace it.
I
If
love
you
it.
embrace the unpleasantness of it, you're actually able to redirect your energy to the possibilities and opportunities that are within your grasp. There's a lot of good things that can come out of this. Once you get past the, this is uncomfortable and I don't like change. Once you get past that, you see the rainbow. You see the potential growth for your organization. So that's number one. The second thing is look inward.
Hmm.
Review your operations and policies and procedures for opportunities to be more compliant and maybe even optimize your current processes that are costing you time and money right now. So, everything, systems always age out. So it's kind of an opportunity for you to examine that thing that you've been doing for the past 10 years and refreshing it. Look at it with new eyes. Um,
I
that's the
love it.
second one. Number three is this: awareness is key, because the faster you know, the more time you'll have to have those strategic discussions and make those operational changes.
Yeah. So right from the onset, I mean, key takeaways from that first, and I love it. Embrace the suck. You can use that in this circumstance. I mean, you got it from serving for our country. You can embrace that in many circumstances. So we embrace the suck, and we have to look inwards and identifying those loopholes that are potentially problematic. They've got poor effectiveness or efficiency. I think that these are all, look, I think every challenge is an opportunity to rise above. And it really is pleasing and encouraging to hear with you, with having so many years of experience in this field, that this isn't a dark shadow on the evolution of where we're headed. Sure, are we going to take a couple of different roads? There's some new channels, there's some new regulations, but ultimately, it sounds like from your take, as long as we're all putting compliance at the forefront, again, putting that patient protection, the patient security at the forefront, where there's a rhyme, there's a way, and it sounds like we can find a way. Um, so that's just, it's truly, truly refreshing to hear that insight from you, Cynthia. I appreciate that so much. And at that, again, I know that we were short on time. So to our listeners, I'm going to go ahead and drop all of the contact information so you can reach out to Cynthia, whether it's her email, whether it's on LinkedIn. As I said, she is a key voice within any of kind of the standard industry publications, be it ACA. She was just at a conference in Santa Barbara last week. Which one was that, Cynthia, by the way?
That was the California Association of Collectors Conference, and we discussed a lot of the new California medical laws, credit reporting, and we also discussed the new CFPB guidance on, collecting medical debt, which has it's a lot of really interesting stuff. So we just strategized and how to do things the right way. It was a great opportunity to meet up with people and exchange ideas.
That is so great to hear. And so my key takeaway from this with you, Cynthia, is that the audience of voices is stronger than a single voice. And so want to again encourage the listeners, get out in your community, talk with any of the lobbyists, express what your day-to-day life is, particularly with respect to some of these changes that, per Cynthia, now even myself, we are heading in the right direction. Embrace the suck, and we'll see a rainbow on the other side. Sounds good. Cynthia,
Great.
we'll go ahead and let you go. Thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to talking with you. We talk frequently, and so excited to invite you back when we get a chance. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris. Bye-bye.